When have you needed the strength and determination to persevere? Honestly, I would love to hear your stories of when you persevered in difficult times in your life. Why? Because those are the most inspiring stories. Hearing stories of perseverance in the midst of challenge, struggle, pain, and other setbacks gives us encouragement and resolve to face those times in our own lives when we need to persevere. Indeed, I have imagined that one of the things I'd most like to do is interview and record people on video telling their stories of persevering through hardships in their lives. It seems like an incredibly wonderful way to spend some time and help others to leave a legacy to their loved ones, as well as to complete strangers. So, honestly, if any of you and all of you would like to record yourselves telling stories of perseverance, I'd love to see them, and with your permission, to make them available to our whole congregation. Now, I bring this up in this message about Isaiah 40 because Isaiah is encouraging us to reframe our stories that we tell ourselves in a way in which reveals that we have and will continue to persevere. Isaiah asks a series of questions about how we think about our lives, and by implication lets his listeners know that we are too often looking at their reality in a less than helpful way. He asks, "Have you known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth?" Do you ever look at your own life or that of others in ways that are not always helpful, healing, nurturing, supportive, or sustaining? We all do, I imagine. Sometimes we can be our own or our loved ones' worst critic. We need more empathy and fewer platitudes. Life is often hard and difficult to negotiate. One of my least favorite platitudes is, "God will never give you more than you can handle." As my grandmother used to say, fiddlesticks. Or at other times she'd say, "That's a bunch of malarkey." I can attest from personal experience that I have been dealt circumstances more than I could handle, and that even decades later still hurt. I may have survived, but the damage seems to have been lasting. Can you relate? When you have experiences that are more than you can handle in a positive, constructive, and healthy way, it takes a while to get over the trauma or even be able to talk about it. This week, my heart was broken when I learned that a female representative from New York who has had several and multiple death threats against her thought that she, on January 6th, in the Capitol complex where she was working on behalf of the American people, was going to be murdered by insurrectionists. She had earlier made reference to feeling her life was in jeopardy right after the facts, but released a video just this past week on Monday, revealing that she was much closer to having been found and killed than most of us realized. In watching that video, it was clear that this experience had traumatized her. That this happened to her and others who were being sought by the insurrectionists and traitors to our country was bad enough. But what truly made my heart sink were the numerous responders to her post who had no empathy whatsoever. Indeed, many laughed at her situation, and still others noted that they wish she would have been caught by the murderous mob. who ended up killing an officer, trampled one of their own to death, and injured at least 198 police officers in the coup attempt. I suspect that going through that experience of thinking your life was very close to ending, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's thought in that moment, is more than one can deal with in an emotionally healthy way. And I pray to God she does not read any of the inhumane comments made toward her after she courageously told her story, for I don't think it would be humanly possible to deal with such hatred towards oneself in an emotionally healthy way. It took her nearly a month to get to the place where she could tell the story of what happened that day as she experienced it. And she could have just chosen not to tell the story, hiding it, keeping it to herself, dealing with it in secret. But I respect her for telling it, for we all need to hear it. And hopefully we can sympathize with it. There are at least 4 instances in my life where I thought I was going to die. They were not as dramatic as her experience, but nonetheless, I recall having thoughts that I would die within moments. It's shocking to have such experiences. I don't know if such experiences make you stronger, as some may claim, but they do leave a mark. However, the worst experiences I've had in my life were not those in which I thought I was going to die, but when people were cruel and malicious. And so when I see people being this way to her now, it re-traumatizes me because I know the feeling. Do any of you? A couple of weeks ago, a transgendered person I know only through social media expressed online how worthless she felt, and that she could no longer see the purpose of her life. As a pastor, I knew that this expression needed to be taken seriously. So, though I have never met this woman in person, I messaged her privately expressing my heartfelt feelings for her in her situation, my affirmation of her worth, and my recommendation that she find professional help to talk about her feelings and circumstances. Thankfully, she replied back that she would, and how important that my outreach of care was for her. She has made updates to her status and seems to be heading in the right direction towards a more healthy view of herself and the world as a whole. She noted, too, that she is going to stay off social media for a while as that has complicated her situation. She, too, is in a place where she has more going on than she knows how to deal with. And I'm thankful that she has done the healthy thing of seeking help from others to help her deal with it. This is what we are to be for each other, is it not? Are we not to be there to care and encourage others when life gets too difficult and hard? When suffering and pain is more than we can negotiate by ourselves? I suspect Isaiah was doing that for an entire nation, trying to help them to get over the trauma of living in captivity. When we feel oppressed, hated, or worthless, we need to hear a different perspective to bring us back to a healthy way of dealing with reality. Now, I surmise from the social context in which Isaiah wrote, as well as the context of the words themselves, that he asked the question referred to earlier not as a criticism of the people, but as a means of getting them to question the way they look at their own reality. His people were coming out of a toxic and traumatic experience where they were treated as less than their humanity deserved. They were likely lied to about their inestimable worth. as a people who were considered subservient to the Babylonians. Their experience was collective. The whole nation underwent this awful circumstance. Toxic or traumatic experiences can lead to delusional thinking and make us question our reality. They can make us question truths we know to be correct and even deny them. And honestly, this is the very design of autocratic rulers, then and now. They want people to question their reality and their values and come to believe in whatever the ones in power tell them is true. And people who are master manipulators are good at making people trust only them, and so to disregard whatever anyone else says, which may differ. Critical thinking is eschewed and condemned as people not being loyal to country, all as an attempt to get them to believe only their manipulators. Psychologists know, too, that this is what happens in abusive relationships. They gaslight their families in pretending that what they know to be true is actually false. And if the families resist, the abuser will make it sound as if they are crazy, even when the evidence is clearly present to say otherwise. Now, what do we do in such instances? How do we bring people back to the truth, to health, and to well-being when they have been involved in toxic or abusive relationships and traumatic events? Well, if only I knew the answer to that one. If any of us did. We could use that right now, especially having been in a toxic relationship with some master manipulators in our own government. Honestly, there are many social scientists and members of the psychiatric community who are telling us that millions of us are actually involved in a cult. That is scary stuff. And trying to deprogram people from that is no easy task. Even doing all the supposedly right things may not produce any positive results. For the more you try to convince someone that they are not in a cult, the more entrenched they become. The more you try to help, the more they think that it is you, not them, who needs the help. It's a catch-22. Still, must we not try? Shall we not try to do what might help those who are in need, whether or not they recognize it themselves? Do we not need to hold them accountable while also keeping our hearts open to their repentance and reparation so that our relationships might once again be restored and reconciled? Do we not need to care for them by reacquainting them with the truth? Indeed, to insist on the truth when they espouse untruths? Do we not need to let them know we love them, even if we can't buy into their conspiracy theories and distorted images of themselves and others? Was this Isaiah's situation? Had the people come to believe all that they had heard negatively about them? Had they finally accepted the lies because they were repeated so frequently?